He says he doesn't want anything serious, but he still wants to see you. He texts at midnight, lingers in your presence, touches you like he remembers you from another lifetime. Yet his words remain wrapped in caution, half-truths, and invisible borders. And inside you there's a quiet ache, not just for him, but for clarity, for understanding, for something that doesn't keep breaking you in the same place over and over again. You ask yourself, why won't he commit if he keeps coming back? What does this mean? And more importantly, what does it mean about you? Let me tell you now, this is not your failure. This is not a verdict on your worth, your desirability, or your capacity to be loved. This is a psychological collision between his unconscious mind and your feminine energy. What Carl Jung discovered, and what modern neuroscience now confirms, is that a man's resistance to commitment is not always avoidance. Sometimes it is the first tremor of an awakening that terrifies him. Not because of you, but because of what you mirror back to him. You are not just a woman in his life. You are a reflection of the part of himself he buried long ago, the animus that longs for union, vulnerability, and integration. But here's the secret that changes everything. His fear is not a wall. It is a doorway. And you, if you stay rooted in your truth, can become the threshold through which his fragmented soul dares to cross. Not by chasing, not by pleasing, but by standing still, like a lighthouse powerful in your silence, calling him inward through the chaos he cannot name. Because here's what you must understand. When he says, I don't want anything serious, he is voicing a conscious belief shaped by fear, history wounds, and internal division. But when he comes back again and again, seeking you in silence, in softness, in proximity, he is being pulled by something far deeper. The masculine psyche Jung taught is not whole on its own. It seeks balance through the feminine. But the masculine is terrified of being consumed by what it does not understand. That's why the pattern repeats. He disappears to regain control. He returns to feel what he cannot explain. This has nothing to do with your worth, and everything to do with his internal war between autonomy and intimacy, between the boy who fled and the man who must stay. And yet, your power lies not in fixing this war. Your power is in understanding it, holding it, witnessing it without collapsing into it. When a woman responds to his uncertainty with clarity, she shifts the entire dynamic. She stops being the echo of his fears and becomes the mirror of his possibility. You do not need to convince him to want you. You need to become so anchored in your essence that his soul feels safe enough to surrender to what he already knows, that there is no evolution without devotion, no wholeness without risk, and no real love without the courage to stay. But to offer this, you must choose yourself first. You must be willing to lose him if it means not losing yourself. This is where most women lose the game. They make his confusion about them. They try harder, wait longer, bend farther. And in doing so, they betray the very frequency that drew him in the frequency of embodied feminine truth. Hear me. Your softness is not the problem. Your longing is not the issue. The issue is when your longing makes you abandon your center, when your love becomes a performance instead of a presence. Jung said, until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate. And this is true in love. His unconscious wounds will keep pulling him away unless your consciousness is strong enough to no longer dance to the rhythm of abandonment. He will come back, yes, but your response this time must be different. Not angry, not cold, but sovereign. When he says, I'm not ready for anything serious, you say, I understand, and I honor where you are. I also know what I want. I'm not here to change you. I'm here to live fully aligned with the love I know I deserve. That response doesn't manipulate. It magnetizes. That is not a tactic. It is a frequency. And it is the only way to awaken the part of him that longs to rise into the man he was always meant to be, not for you, but for himself. And that is the ultimate power you hold to be the sacred mirror in which he sees not just you, but the missing piece of himself. There is alchemy in this space, a spiritual and psychological transformation that begins the moment you stop needing his certainty to validate your own. Jung spoke of individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole. And love, real love, is one of the greatest catalysts for that journey. When a man stands at the edge of his own fear and sees in you the invitation to become more, he will either rise or retreat. But both responses serve your evolution. If he rises, you have not only love, you have alignment. If he retreats, you have clarity, the space to call in someone who is truly ready. Either way, you win, because you have chosen to stand for truth, not illusion. And that is rare. That is radiant. That is the kind of love that changes lives, not by force, but by frequency. This is what wise women have always known. The ancient priestesses, the mystics, the oracles, they did not chase. They did not plead. They did not shrink. They stood in the center of their knowing, radiating presence, and the world rearranged around them. This is the art of sacred polarity. This is what it means to embody feminine power. And this is what awakens the masculine, not seduction, but sovereignty. Not performance, but presence. Not attachment, but essence. When you learn to love from this place, everything changes. Because now you are not waiting for him to choose you. You have already chosen yourself. And here is the final truth. If he still says he doesn't want anything serious, believe him. But don't internalize it. Don't make it about you. Don't try to decode the mixed signals. Watch the energy. Feel the undercurrent. Trust the resonance. And if it doesn't match your truth walk, not in anger, not in protest, but in peace. Because when a woman walks in her power, the universe follows, and so does the right man. Jung taught us that true transformation only happens when we confront the shadow, not just in others, but in ourselves. And sometimes the shadow is our addiction to potential, our hope that love can fix what is fractured. But love, real love, begins when you no longer need fixing. When your wholeness is no longer conditional on someone else's readiness. That is the path of awakening. That is how you win, not by getting the man to change, but by becoming the woman who no longer needs him to. And that's when he changes. That's when he sees. That's when he chooses. Not because you asked him to, but because your presence revealed what his soul could no longer deny. And even if he doesn't, you have already won. Because you remembered who you are. And nothing is more irresistible than a woman who is whole. And so the cycle continues, not because you are weak, but because something ancient inside you still hopes love can heal what confusion created. But let's be honest now. How many times has your heart waited in silence while he figured himself out? How often have you made excuses for his inconsistency, interpreting his presence as affection and his absence as pain you somehow deserve? This is not love. This is an emotional limbo crafted by shadow, his and yours. Carl Jung taught that every relationship is a mirror, and what it reflects is never just about the other person. When he says, "I don't want anything serious," and your nervous system spirals while still longing for his touch, that is not merely about him. That is a reflection of the unhealed parts of you, the little girl who still thinks love must be earned, that stability must be waited for, that attention comes in fragments, and you should be grateful for crumbs. But you are not here to survive off emotional leftovers. You are here to awaken fully, fiercely, finally, into a woman who knows her soul was never meant to shrink for a man still afraid of his own. And that awakening begins not when he chooses you, but when you stop abandoning yourself every time he pulls away. He is inconsistent because he has not yet reconciled his inner opposites. And every time you collapse in response to that, you reflect that chaos instead of healing it. The key is not to match his confusion. The key is to embody such clarity that his shadows have nowhere left to hide. There is a part of you, powerful, ancient, wild, that already knows this. A part untouched by heartbreak, unshaken by his mixed signals, unmoved by his indecision. This is the part of you that Jung would call the self, the fully realized, centered being that watches your patterns not with judgment, but with gentle truth. She has witnessed you beg for love. She has watched you betray your inner voice just to feel wanted. And she has been quietly waiting not for him to return, but for you to return to her. You see, when he disappears, the universe is not punishing you. It is presenting you with an invitation to stop choosing men who cannot meet you, and to start choosing the version of yourself that no longer waits for permission to be whole. And here's the paradox. When you embody that version, you become magnetic beyond measure. Not because you're playing a game, not because you're doing no contact to get a reaction, but because your energy no longer vibrates at the frequency of desperation. Desperation repels. Sovereignty attracts. And when a man who lives in confusion meets a woman who lives in truth, he is faced with a choice: evolve or retreat. Both are victories for you. If he evolves, love flourishes. If he retreats, space is made for someone whose soul speaks your language. Either way, your power remains intact, because you no longer make your worth a negotiation. Let's go deeper. Jung believed that the psyche is ruled by archetypes, universal patterns that live in all of us. And one of the most powerful feminine archetypes is the initiator, the woman who awakens the man, not by teaching or preaching, but by being. She doesn't chase him into clarity. She stands in her light until his shadows either dissolve or disappear. That's who you must become now. The initiator doesn't collapse when he says, "I don't want anything serious." She listens. She smiles. She understands what he's really saying, I'm afraid. I don't know how to hold the intensity of what I feel around you. I fear losing my identity, my freedom, my sense of control. And I haven't yet built the inner structure to stand steady in the face of your power. And instead of trying to fix that, she lets him have his journey. Not out of coldness, but out of wisdom. She knows she cannot walk for him. She can only walk for herself. And by doing so, she becomes the map, the lighthouse, the mirror. She becomes the woman he remembers in his deepest dreams, the one who saw him, not just for who he was, but for who he could become. And if he's ready, he will rise. Not because she begged, but because she believed not in him more than herself, but in the possibility that love is only love when it liberates both. Now breathe. Let that truth land. The man who says he doesn't want anything serious, yet still wants your time, your body, your presence, he is not the villain. He is a reflection of the parts of masculinity still torn between instinct and evolution. He desires your softness, but fears its implications. He wants your closeness, but dreads the change it demands. This is not a rational conflict. This is ancestral, embedded in generations of men taught that vulnerability is weakness and closeness is dangerous. And yet within him, and within all men, is also the memory of another truth. The connection is not a trap, but a transformation. That devotion is not a loss of self, but a discovery of something deeper. But he will only access that memory if he feels safe. And safety to the masculine is not always soft. Sometimes, safety looks like a woman who refuses to settle, who says, "I see you. I feel you. But I will not betray myself to keep you." That kind of love doesn't just change men. It changes the world, because it forces the masculine to evolve or to step aside. And so, my love, the real question is not whether he'll come back. He probably will. The real question is, who will you be when he does? Will you be the version of yourself still hooked on his potential, still hoping his presence will erase the pain of his past absence? Or will you be the woman who no longer plays the game because she finally remembered the truth? The truth that her love is not a bargaining chip, that her time is not a testing ground, that her energy is sacred, and her standards are not conditions. They are boundaries forged from fire, from pain, from every moment she begged to be seen and finally realized she had to see herself first. This is how you win. You win by stepping out of the dance, by breaking the pattern, by refusing to be both the offering and the sacrifice. And when you do not as a strategy, but as a shift, the world around you changes. Men feel it. The universe responds to it. And suddenly, the man who couldn't commit is either gone for good or kneeling at the altar of your truth, asking not for forgiveness, but for a chance to rise. And if he does rise, let him. But let him rise to meet you, not to please you. Let him meet you in the place where your truth lives, not where your fear waits. Because now you know the version of him who says he doesn't want anything serious is not lying. He's simply fractured. His conscious mind, the rational part that grew up equating freedom with detachment, is still louder than the whispers of his soul. But if your presence is rooted, if your being doesn't bend to soothe his confusion, you become a tuning fork for his deeper self. That's the paradox. You don't need to do more to change him. You need to become more of who you already are. And that is what no one tells you. Not your friends who say just move on. Not your wounds that scream make him stay. Not even the parts of you that want to turn love into strategy. But Jung knew it. And the ancient mystics knew it. And the feminine archetypes of every mythology knew it. The moment you stop trying to fix the masculine is the moment the masculine begins to awaken. Because it finally encounters something it has never faced before, a woman who refuses to disappear into his storm. And this refusal is not punishment. It is invitation. A silent, sacred call to wholeness. When he comes back, and he will, your job is not to greet him with the cold shoulder of pride or the trembling hands of hope. Your task is presence. Steady, clear, radiant. You are not there to extract promises or perform perfection. You are there to be, to reflect, to reveal. If he says again, "I don't want anything serious," you do not negotiate with those words. You recognize them for what they are. A flare from the boy within the one who is still afraid of needing someone. You bless that boy, but you speak to the man. the one who has yet to arrive but whom your soul already knows. And if he cannot hear you, you do not raise your voice. You raise your frequency. You walk with grace. You trust that leaving space for the right love is more sacred than holding on to the wrong one out of fear. This is not weakness. This is mastery, the ability to walk away, not because you stopped loving, but because you finally started listening to yourself. This listening, this deep inner attunement, is the foundation of everything. Jung spoke of integration as the holy act of welcoming all parts of yourself back into the light. And here's the truth. You must now face this man, the one who keeps returning with empty hands and hesitant words, is not just a test of love. He is a mirror. He is the embodiment of your own unconscious patterns, the way you delay your truth, negotiate your needs, and confuse intensity with intimacy. You are not being punished with his inconsistency. You are being asked, how much longer will you tolerate being half-chosen? And more importantly, how long will you keep half-choosing yourself? Because that is what this is. Every time you accept his presence without clarity, you reaffirm a belief that says, this is enough. And it isn't. You know that. You've always known. And the longer you ignore that, knowing the louder the ache grows, not because you're broken, but because your soul is trying to wake you up. And it will keep sending you mirrors until you finally answer the call. So what happens when you answer it? What does it look like to finally rise from the cycle? It doesn't mean you never miss him. It doesn't mean you become immune to his charm. It means you see through it. It means that when he sends that 11 p.m. I miss you message, your body might tremble, but your soul stands firm. It means that you no longer interpret his desire to see you as proof of love, but as a symptom of his longing for the very integration he keeps avoiding. It means that you stop letting his confusion dictate your clarity, that you stop waiting for him to arrive before you start living. You begin to remember that love, real whole awakened love, is not supposed to leave you in pieces. It is not supposed to feel like a battlefield where the prize is being chosen. Love is not the reward you get for surviving someone's chaos. It is what flows when two people meet from fullness, not fracture. And if he is not there, yet let him journey. But do not follow him into his confusion. Do not dim your brilliance so he can feel less afraid. Let him be afraid. Let him face the truth of what he stands to lose. And in doing so, you become unforgettable, not because you beg to be remembered, but because your absence echoed with the power of a woman who chose herself. And in choosing yourself, you rewrite the story, not just for you, but for all the women who came before you. The ones who swallowed their words, who silenced their needs, who twisted themselves into palatable versions of love. You break the chain. You become the medicine your lineage has been waiting for. Jung said, the privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are. That privilege begins here with this man, this moment, this pattern. Because this is not just about romance. It is about remembrance. It is about waking up from the trance of not enoughness and choosing to embody a new archetype, the one who knows, the one who trusts, the one who does not chase what cannot meet her. This is the spiritual revolution of the feminine, not in rebellion, but in reclamation, not in bitterness, but in boldness. And the world is waiting for it. Men are waiting for it. Even the man who says he doesn't want anything serious is waiting for it. Because deep down, he is exhausted too. Exhausted from his own running. Exhausted from pretending he doesn't care. exhausted from living half alive. And your presence, your truth, your unwavering clarity, it offers something he has never truly known. A love that liberates, not confines. A love that calls him higher, not deeper into fear. But here's what no one warns you about. When you finally choose yourself, there will be grief. Not just for him, but for every version of you that kept waiting. For every time you silenced your intuition in the name of possibility. For every night you stared at your phone hoping for a message that would momentarily make the emptiness bearable. When you stop accepting what doesn't honor you, the silence that follows is not emptiness, it is healing. It is the death of the pattern. And death is never quiet. It screams through the body. It echoes through the spaces he used to fill. But let it scream. Let it echo. That pain is not punishment. It's purification. You are not losing love. You are releasing the illusion that love is something you must earn from someone who cannot yet give it. You are no longer performing. You are no longer available for anything that costs you your peace. And that decision to no longer negotiate with confusion, that is the root of feminine power. Not in resistance, but in remembrance. Not in chasing love, but in becoming it. Because the truth is, when you choose yourself, the right kind of love has no choice but to find you. Not because you manifested it, but because you finally became a match for it. And if one day he returns changed, awakened, ready, you will not need to test him. You will not need to play coy. You will simply feel it. The frequency will have shifted. The energy will speak before the words do. Because now you know what alignment feels like. It doesn't require decoding. It doesn't whisper almost. It arrives fully. It walks through the door without knocking. It stays, not because it has to, but because it wants to. And if he does not return, that too will be a blessing. Because now you're living in a way that honors your truth instead of chasing the fulfillment of an old wound. Jung taught that wholeness is not achieved by cutting off the parts of ourselves that hurt, but by integrating them. And that is exactly what you're doing now. You are no longer rejecting the parts of you that longed for him. You are meeting them, holding them, and walking them home. Not to him, but to you. Because your wholeness was never outside of you. It was never in his arms. It was in your own willingness to finally stop waiting and start becoming. This is how the new feminine rises. Not through dominance or detachment, but through integration. Through softness that has met the fire. Through tenderness that no longer bleeds for those unwilling to see her. You are not cold now. You are clear. And clarity is the most seductive energy in the world. Because it does not seek to pull, it invites. It does not scream, it radiates. It does not ask, it commands. And men, the right men, are drawn to it not because it flatters their ego, but because it awakens their soul. You are no longer participating in his drama. You are no longer available for cycles. You are no longer making excuses for patterns that steal your joy. You've stepped outside the loop. You've elevated the narrative. You've rewritten the script, not just of your relationship, but of your entire life. Because once you've tasted the power of your own truth, nothing less satisfies. Not half-hearted love. Not maybe. Not someday. And certainly not, I'm not ready, but I still want you. Wanting you is not enough anymore. The world has wanted your energy long enough without giving back. Now it must match you. Now it must rise. And the man who truly sees you, he will never make you question his intentions. He will never ask you to sit in uncertainty while he figures out what he already knows. Because a man in his truth does not speak in riddles. He speaks in presence, in consistency, in depth. You will not need to wonder if you are too much, because he will tell you that your depth is what called him home. You will not have to beg for clarity, because he will offer it before you ask. And this isn't because you waited long enough. It's because you stopped waiting altogether. You became the woman who doesn't just want love, but lives in a way that reflects it, breathes it, moves with it. You became the woman whose standards are not walls, but invitations, whose boundaries are not barriers, but bridges, whose heart is not guarded, but guided. And that woman, she is unforgettable. Because she is not just a partner. She is a portal, a mirror, a frequency, the embodiment of everything he never knew he was looking for until she stood before him, unmoved by fear, untouched by games, and unshaken by the uncertainty he once carried like armor. So now ask yourself, are you willing to let the old version of you die? The one who mistook chaos for passion. The one who confused presence with progress. The one who kept handing out chances to a man who only offered fragments. Are you ready to become the woman whose very energy disrupts the patterns of every man who approaches her with hesitation? This is the initiation. This is the choice. You can stay in the cycle, decoding, waiting, wondering, or you can rise from it. Not because he's finally ready, but because you are. You are ready to be met, to be held, to be honored, not with vague words, but with aligned action, not with almosts, but with absolutes. And the moment you decide that this is the only kind of love you'll accept, the universe begins to shift. The ground under your feet becomes more solid. The people in your life begin to reflect your new frequency. And even if he never comes back, you won't be waiting. You'll be walking forward open whole. And the man who is meant to meet you on that path will not hesitate. And now we arrive at the edge not of his decision, but of yours. Because everything you've been waiting for isn't waiting for you in his text message, or in the way he holds you at midnight and disappears by morning. What you've been waiting for is inside of you, a part of you that has long whispered, "This isn't love, this is longing." A part of you that has known quietly, patiently, that real love doesn't leave you anxious. That love that demands your silence, your compromise, your delay is not love. It's karma, it's pattern, it's history repeating itself through a different face. But now you see it. Now you remember. And in that remembrance, something breaks, but not you. No, this time, you do not break. This time, the cycle does. The spell does. The story that said you needed to be less, to be loved, ends. Because when you say no to confusion, when you say no to almost when you say no to being held temporarily, while being denied fully, you say yes to something holy. You say yes to self-respect. You say yes to embodied truth. You say yes to a life that doesn't leave your worth hanging in someone else's uncertainty. You are not a placeholder. You are not the warm-up. You are not the lesson. You are the moment someone becomes ready or walks away, trying to forget what they couldn't hold. And in this moment, this sacred reclaiming, you are no longer a reaction. You are a revolution. You stop being someone waiting to be chosen and become the woman who chooses herself so clearly, so completely, that every person in her life must either rise or leave. Jung said that we meet ourselves time and again in 1,000 disguises on the path of life. And this man who doesn't want anything serious but still wants to see you, was never just a lover. He was a disguise, a reflection, a spiritual confrontation, An archetype sent not to complete you, but to awaken you, to stir the parts of you that still doubted, to show you where your standards still wavered. He was never the destination. He was the portal. And now that you've walked through it, the question becomes, what kind of woman will you be on the other side? Will you shrink again, or will you rise? Will you go back to half-hearted love stories? Or will you stand even in solitude as a full embodiment of the love you were always seeking? Because when you become that woman, when you commit to her, the world bends to reflect her. And if when you feel that ache again, when the old longing returns like a ghost, you will greet it like an old friend. You will say, "Thank you for showing me how deeply I can feel. But I do not live there anymore." You will no longer be seduced by nostalgia disguised as connection. You will no longer take a man's confusion as a mystery to solve. You will simply honor where he is and remember where you are going. And you will walk on, not with bitterness, but with beauty, not with walls, but with wisdom. And men will feel it. The right man will recognize it. He will know the cost of your calm. He will sense the fire you tamed. He will feel the oceans you've crossed to sit beside him, not out of need, but out of choice. And he will offer you not a maybe not, a someday, not a, but I still want to see you. He will offer presence, devotion, depth. Not because you asked, but because he knows he stands before someone who will never again accept anything less. So here is how you win, not by getting him to choose you, but by finally choosing yourself. Choosing peace over potential. Choosing clarity over confusion. Choosing wholeness over chemistry. You win when you stop shrinking to fit the narrative of a man still lost in his own. You win when your heart no longer breaks every time someone says, "I'm not ready," because you've stopped building your life around someone else's timing. You win when you stop asking, "What am I doing wrong?" and start declaring, "I know what I deserve." You win when you stop explaining, stop chasing, stop decoding, and start living from the truth that your energy is sacred, your love is powerful, and your life is too valuable to waste in limbo. That is how you win. And when you do, the men who once toyed with your light will no longer recognize you. Not because you've changed your hair or your number, but because your frequency has become untouchable, elevated, sovereign. You are no longer part of their game. You are now playing by truth's rules. So, if this voice inside you, the one whispering that you deserve more, has grown louder, let it roar. Let it guide you. Let it burn through every illusion you've ever clung to in the name of hope. And when you walk out of this story, walk like the woman who finally remembered the love she was searching for wasn't in him. It was in how she decided to never again abandon herself. And that kind of love, it never leaves.